On July 30th, 1908, a 1907 Model 35 Thomas Flyer, a 60 horsepower roadster built by the Thomas Motor Company of Buffalo, New York, arrived in Paris. An American car in France would certainly have been a novelty in 1908, but this Thomas Flyer was even more special, having just traveled nearly 20,000 miles in an around the world race co sponsored by the New York Times and the Parisian newspaper Le Matin that had started in New York City on February 12th. In a time in history when only 9 people had successfully driven all the way across the U.S. in a horseless carriage, and none in winter, 6 cars from 4 nations had attempted to drive that took them from New York to San Francisco, by boat to Japan, then across the barren expanse of Russia, through Germany to France, much of the way without roads. The American car had won the race by a whopping 26 days ahead of the German Protus, still considered the largest winning margin in any motorsport event ever. The victory of the Thomas Flyer helped to establish the reputation of American cars, which previous to the race were thought to be inferior to European models, although the victory did not ultimately save the E.R. Thomas Motor Company, which went out of business in 1919. But the victory of the Thomas Flyer did more than that. The point of the race had been to prove the viability of the motor car, as Le Matin explained, that as long as a man has a car, he can do anything and go anywhere. At the time, cars were still generally called horseless carriages. They were an expensive luxury seen as a plaything of the wealthy and far less reliable than a horse. The Thomas Flyer had been unique among the race entrants, only 3 of which had finished. Unlike the custom-made German car, the Thomas Flyer was a stock production model with standardized parts, making repair easier. In a race intended to prove the viability of the automobile, it was the technology that would make the automobile accessible to the masses that made the difference over the custom-made Protos, the emblem of a time when automobiles were merely playthings for the wealthy. That difference would become apparent later that year when, on October 1st of 1908, the car that changed everything, the Model T, first rolled off of Henry Ford's assembly line. The age of the horseless carriage had ended, and the age of the automobile had begun.